Good morning, Fish USA fans. My name's Karl Weixlmann. I've been a fly fishing guide in Erie, Pennsylvania for over a quarter of a century. And today we're going to talk about some of the best flies I use to fish on the South Shore of Lake Erie, the perennial Steelhead Alley, which runs from Buffalo, New York to Toledo, Ohio. I'm going to start off with the Little Precious Streamer. I gotta say it's probably the most popular fly to come out of Erie, Pennsylvania. I started tying these about 25 years ago to imitate the most prevalent bait fish in Lake Erie, which is an emerald shiner imitation. And as a fly fishing guide, I want to be able to tie flies that are quick, simple, with a small number of steps, but something that's going to be very effective in catching fish. So the less time I can spend at a fly tying vise, the better for me. Even though I love to tie ornate, articulated streamer patterns, most of the flies that I use for my daily fishing, fly fishing for steelhead, most of the patterns I use are relatively simple and quick and easy to make. That way we're not really worried about losing flies, throwing flies up in bushes. So instead of losing an articulated fly up in a tree, I'm not losing like 15 or 20 minutes of my life. So I like tying stuff that's quick, easy, very effective. We're going to start off with the Little Precious. I'm using a size 6 streamer hook. I've attached a 1/8 bead on the end of that hook. And I want to put it in the vise, and I want to start off tying the bottom of the fly or the belly of the streamer. Our materials that we're going to use today, we're going to use fin nor raccoon. Used to come in strips, like zonker strips. Now you can find it commercially in patches. So you'll be able to get a lot more flies out of the patches than you would a strip of a fin nor raccoon. Here's an example of a completed fly right here. I call that one a creek minnow precious. I tie several different versions for different conditions. It kind of depends on where I'm fishing. If I'm fishing the beach, I'm mostly using the standard Little Precious. Very simple streamer. Olive over white is a universal streamer pattern. I put a little flash in the middle. So we're going to start with the hook upside down in the vise, and I'm going to bring my thread right behind the bead. Bind it down. I like to put a little bit of a bump right there. That's going to keep that bead up in the front. And I'm going to bring the thread down to, you could call that a little bit of a collar of thread right behind the bead. Give that a clip. Now we're going to take our white fin raccoon here. I'm going to take a little bit of material off, approximately like this. You can thin it down if you think you have too much material. Give it a little cut. Now, I do a lot of things with my fingers, right? When I'm fly tying, I actually lick my fingers when I'm using materials like this. So I'll give my fingers a little lick. I'm going to take the end of the material and I'm going to hold it. And I'm going to lick my finger and I'm going to pull out any errant fur that's underneath. And I'm going to put my fingers back approximately where I want to tie it down on the hook. Right about there. I'm going to place that over my hook. I want the material to come back a little bit farther than the bend of the hook. That looks pretty good right there. Now I'm going to wet all this, stick it in my mouth, wet it down, give it a clip. I'm going to take that material and tie it right down behind that bead. Push that bead up to the front. I'm going to do a loose wrap to make sure I got all of the material. And I want that material thrust up right behind that bead to kind of hold that bead in place. So I'm going to bind this down, working forward. And if I think I need to pull some material back, I can loosen up the thread, pull it back. If I think I need to push it up a little bit more, I can loosen that thread. So I'm going to pull it back just a tiny bit more and continue binding it down right in behind that bead. If some material goes up into that bead, I think that's exactly kind of what you want to do, is get some of that material up into that bead, which kind of holds it in place. So that's the belly of the fly right here. What I normally do is I'll take the hook off of the vise real quick, and I'm going to look at it, and I want the bottom of the hook to come up right through the middle of the material. As you can see right here, right through the middle of the material. That's the belly of the fly. Looks good, and I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to lift up that material and stick it right back in the vise. Clamp it down nice and good. That looks a pretty good start right there. So now we want to add a little flash. I'm really not particular on the types of flash materials I use. You can use Flashaboo, you can use Krelex, you can use Crystal Flash. I used to like mixing a lot of different colors of Crystal Flash together to give that body that iridescent look of a real live bait fish. I don't think that's absolutely necessary, so use whatever flash you got laying around. Today I have some Pearl Krelex material. So I'm going to pull off a small portion of that. I'd say that's maybe 10 to 12 fibers. Trim that right off. Again, I use my fingers in my mouth a lot when I'm fly tying, so I'm going to lick this. See how it brings the material together? I'm going to lick this so I can get a nice clean cut with my scissors. There's a good clean cut. I'm going to place that material right behind that bead. Again, if I want to try to shove it up into that bead, I can shove it up into that bead. I'm using red thread. I'm not saying that you only have to use red thread. I kind of think that maybe it gives the look of a, like in a lure manufacturing, gives the look of, the red gills behind the minnow's head. And then I'll twist my vise this way to make sure the material is on top of the hook. If it's not on top of that hook shank, I'm going to use my thumb. I'm going to push it over so it's right in the middle. Bring it back down. And I'm going to cut the material a little bit shorter than the length of the fin nor raccoon material. Quick little clip like that, looks good. Save the rest for later. Now we're going to use olive raccoon, fin nor raccoon, fin raccoon. Lots of people call it by a lot of different names. I actually get some of my raccoon fur from a Mr. Colin Nash over in New York State, who dyes his own raccoon. And that way I can use a lot of different customized colors. So I got a lot of material there. I don't need that much material. I'm going to thin that down. Get a little bunch of the olive, which is approximately the same amount of material as I use on the belly. Cut that off. Again, I'm going to wet my fingers and remove any of the underfur on here. You can use a comb if you want to. I just find it easier to do this. I'm going to bunch that together with my right hand, and I'm going to place it on top of the hook. That looks really nice. And I'll place it on top of the hook. I want it pretty much approximately the same length as the belly. That looks pretty good right there. Again, I'm going to wet all this down so I can bind it to the hook. Hold it up again, make sure I got the right length. That looks pretty good right there. Trim that off right where I want it. Place it on top of the hook shank. Some of the material might roll over a little bit, but I'm going to put a couple of base wraps down before I really come down and hammer and go real tight with it. So I'll turn my vise and look at it this way. That looks pretty good this way. I'll turn my vise this way. Looks pretty good that way. Starting to look pretty good right there. Okay, now I'm going to start bringing that thread forward. As you can see, the material is shoved up right behind that bead. If I can get a little bit to go into that bead, that's good, because that will hold that bead in place. So I'm going to bind it down right up in behind that bead, right into there. I'm going to turn my vise this way because I want to make sure I got real nice clean thread wraps from the back of the gill up to the front of the bead. That side looks really good. So now I'm going to go 1, 2, and I'm going to place my thread wraps right in front of the last thread wrap because I want a real nice clean thread wrap collar right here. That looks good right here. So I'm almost done with it. A lot of people use these tools for finishing off flies. I've actually never used those tools before. Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't, but here's how I finish off my flies. I go right over my finger, I do a loop overhand knot, bring it right in behind the bead and cinch it down. I'll do another one. 1 over, sometimes you can do 2 over. Bring it right down. Give it a little clip right here. That's a completed fly. Quick, simple, easy, catches a lot of fish. It's really kind of a multi-species fly, imitates any type of minnows. A lot of friends of mine use these for inland trout, and they catch a lot of fish on those fishing inland. Obviously, this is my favorite beach fly. They work excellent in the tributaries themselves too. Fish it under an indicator, swing it, strip it. You really can't fish a little precious the wrong way. If you want to add some head cement on there to finish it off, I usually use some fast drying nail polish. Usually works good for me, but however you want to do it. Sometimes I'll epoxy the thread behind the bead, but that's your completed fly, the Little Precious.